We don't hit home runs on this pod, we work station to station. I am back with my battery mate, as always, Dustin, and we are here to talk and prepare for the upcoming Jays season. Today, we're going to talk about the infield portion of the team, and I think it's a little timely, Dustin, as we had a move with the Jays, I believe, yesterday.
Yeah, I think they finally solved that crowded infield problem that we'd been talking about by trading away Santiago Espinal for, I don't have the name. Do you have the name in front of you?
Yep. We got Chris McKelvin back for Santiago Espinal. McKelvin's I guess he's a pitching prospect. He was the eighth round pick coming over from the Cincinnati Reds. Dustin, do you have any really thoughts on this trade?
I think it solves a couple problems. One, the obvious issue of the crowded infield that we just mentioned, but also it gives us a little bit of flexibility with the roster, the 40-man specifically, and allowing the Jays to add a emergency catcher in replacement of Danny Jansen, who went down with a hand injury, got hit in the hand and broke a small bone in his wrist. So they'll probably need somebody to fill in. It looks like it's going to be Brian Severin who's going to fill that spot.
Well, before we really get into talking about the rest of the infield, we did basically say a couple months ago that Santiago Espinal was going to be the one without a chair when this game of Blue Jays infield musical chairs ended, and it appears we were right. And I think it just kind of seemed. It essentially seemed like his kind of days were up, and he just wasn't a place for him on the roster.
Yeah, and honestly, I think it's to a certain degree a favor for Santiago Espinal. I mean, they could have just sent him down. He has options. They could have just sent him to Buffalo and let him languish there and, serve out the rest of his contract or whatever with the Jays. But they sent him over to the Reds. They're not a bad team. Their division is, winnable for them. And, he'll have an opportunity to play for them at least in the beginning of this year. I think they've had some injury struggles with their infield, so he'll get some opportunities. I think it's a good opportunity for them, for him rather, and for the Jays. So it's kind of a win-win as far as I see.
Okay, so let's get into this infield a little bit. And so I guess the we kind of wanted to talk about the infield, and of course there are some fixtures, but there are some moving parts as well. But I guess as the basis, we do have a 26-man roster, 13 of which are pitchers. And given the Jays' injury, I don't know if it's a crisis, but it's pretty bad in the pitching department. They're limited to 13 pitchers on the roster, and we expect them to bring 13 pitchers given all the issues they're having right now. We're not going to talk about pitching. We'll save that for another episode. But Dustin, let's go through here. Maybe if you want to start kind of behind the plate and talk about who we have there, and we'll kind of scratch off some names and numbers, and we'll see what space we have left on the roster.
As I mentioned, earlier, Danny Jansen hurt his hand. At the start of spring training, I would have expected, at least for this season, that the catching duties were going to be pretty split. Like Danny Jansen and Alejandro Kirk are kind of a 1 and 1A, at least for this team. I think, they each offer different strengths and weaknesses. Danny Jansen with the bat, and Alejandro Kirk, a much better sort of blocker and framer. And Danny Jansen is probably a better game caller on the defensive side, and they both offer reasonable enough offensive power and hitting ability, at least what they've shown in some of their careers, to be kind of a good 1-2. I think that's would have been a great situation. Danny Jansen obviously has a tendency to sort of lean out over the plate and get his hands broken. And he did that this year pretty early, which is unfortunate for him. Hopefully, it sounds like it's a short-term injury and he could be back as early as, maybe the first week or two of the regular season. So it looks like Alejandro Kirk is going to get the bulk of the work, at least for the beginning. They're going to fill in the the sort of backup role with a minor league catcher, Brian Severin. Likely he'll catch 1 or 2 games a week, and Kirk will get the majority of the time, at least early on. I think that Kirk is one of the maybe 3, 4, 5 guys that really need to kind of improve themselves this year, come back into form, and they're relying on to really, bring this team back to the form that they were in 2021. And he's going to be a key part of that. He's got to, improve on what he did last year. And some may say that, he kind of missed the spring with his child being born, and then, he never really caught up. I'm not so sure about that. I think, from my eyes, I think he was just, to me, Kirk makes really good contact, but he, there's a little bit of a downside to that is when you make contact on balls that you shouldn't be making contact on, i.e., you should just let them go, they end up, grounding out. And, he's not a speedster, so you can't run those kinds of balls out. So to me, he's got to kind of make better decisions on the swing and choose to swing at balls that he can really kind of drive and turn around on and maybe pull even. So that's what I think he's got to do. To me, looks like early in the spring and even in the last few days, he's really kind of shown that he is doing that. He's looking a lot better. So I'm optimistic about his turnaround.
Well, Alejandro Kirk is used to filling in for Danny Jansen. He did a lot of that last year, and he's going to do a lot of that early in the season. So I think he has an opportunity to grab the bull by the horns, and we are expecting him to be a lot better, and this team needs him to be a lot better offensively. I do think he definitely brings a little bit of a different profile to Danny Jansen. Danny Jansen seems to be the lower average, higher power guy. Of course, you touched on his ability to call a game seems to be a bit better than Kirk, whereas Kirk is a bit better defensively, and he seems to be, well, at least the his Silver Slugger year, he was a higher average, kind of higher contact, higher on base percentage, less power guy. It's interesting you say that, maybe his pitch selection could be a bit better. One of the things I like about Alejandro Kirk is that he isn't fleet of foot. And you know what he does in exchange for that? He takes a lot of walks. And most years he will actually walk more than he'll strike out, which is fine by me. And so maybe, I don't know if he has quite the issue with swinging at pitches maybe off the plate like other players on this team have seemed to had it in the last 18 months. But it seems like, maybe just honing in on those pitches that, as you said, he can really do damage with, and as they would say, touch some green. Because if a ball is on the ground with Alejandro Kirk running down first baseline, obviously it has to get through, because if it doesn't, he's not beating it out.
Yeah, I think it's exactly right. He's he's going to be on the base paths a lot, and just generally with this team, I think they need to hit more home runs. And if if Alejandro's on the base and you hit a home run, there's no problem. He just trots around. But I think I heard somebody, I believe it was on the At the Letters podcast, they were talking about, like he's never scored on a double from first. He's like almost, very rarely scores on a single from second. So having him on the base paths and you're not hitting home runs is going to be a problem. But the fact that he gets on base, that's good. And like you said, he doesn't strike out a lot. He makes good contact. And my point is that he's got to make a little bit, he's got to like narrow that swing decision, window, let's say. Maybe risk letting a few pitches go that are in the zone, but he can't do damage on. I think that's going to be a theme for this whole team, to be honest. I think that's, in my opinion, kind of a team wide problem last year. And we'll talk more about that probably as we go around the diamond.
Okay, so we're gonna pencil in Alejandro Kirk and Danny Jansen slash Brian Servin. So we have two roster spots taken up. Dustin, I am going to move to third base. And for the purpose of this discussion, we'll bring in IKF. Obviously, a new addition to the team. He did win a gold glove as a third baseman in 2019. So that's why I'm putting him at third base. I would expect him to essentially be there in most cases and most well in a lot when he's not playing in the outfield. I think he's probably going to be at third or maybe when Justin Turner's not playing third, which I don't think is going to be very often. But um, Justin Turner will probably get a little bit of look there, a few games. But I would think Isaiah Kinner-Falefa is going to be our essentially everyday third baseman. Uh, I don't know a ton about him other than he seems to be kind of a Whit Merrifield like utility player with maybe a lesser bat, but probably a better glove, or maybe is a bit more versatile, I guess. And I think that's what probably Atkins and Co. liked and brought him in. But he also did play quite well last year when Aaron Judge was out. And it seems like we seem to have this kind of conversation a lot with a lot of players of, you know, getting an opportunity. Well, he's going to get an opportunity this year, and we'll see how he fares.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree that he's likely going to be the guy that sees the most number of starts at third base. I mean, they paid him, fairly handsomely now that, kind of got hindsight through the offseason of what guys of his, let's say, caliber received. He's probably the most well paid of his, free agent class, let's say, in his band of skill. Um, and yeah, I think they like him. I think they like his defense. You know, coming from Matt Chapman, you're always going to take a little bit of a drop, but I don't think it's that big of a drop. I think he's a defensive first player for the most part. He's got a little bit of skills with the bat, and like you said, he did have a pretty good month when he was given the opportunity to play every day. So hopefully he can take those reins. He's going to be a bottom of the order, probably hit eighth or ninth, depending on who else is in there. And, hopefully he can just, turn over that lineup, get on base, and play great defense. And then spell guys in the outfield, shortstop if Bo needs a day off, second base, that kind of thing. So I think we're looking at him as your everyday guy. I don't know how much we're going to see Turner. I would like to see Turner play in at third base, probably more than he did with the Red Sox last year. Just having Turner in the lineup is good. If you can have Turner at third, and then like when Danny Jansen is healthy, he's catching with Kirk DHing, or having somebody like if Joey Votto ends up on the team, or Vogelback in the DH spot, and having Turner in the lineup would be just like adding a lot more length and a lot more power to that lineup. So I would like to see Turner try and get, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 starts at third base, maybe more. I'm not so sure we're going to see that. But this is probably the position I'm most kind of curious about, and seeing how John Schneider will approach it and how the team will fill it out, because it is, since the beginning of the offseason, we've been talking about needing to fill this spot with like a decent bat, and they really didn't, other than Justin Turner. But I don't see him running out there every day.
Well, Justin Turner didn't really have the opportunity to play third base very often, especially when you have a player like Rafael Devers ahead of you. Not really going to get too much of a look there, given his abilities. All right. So we're going to add two players to our rundown. So we now have four. So we've added IKF and Justin Turner. Dustin, do you want to move over to short and talk about who we're gonna see there?
Well, I mean, I think we got that one locked up for 162 games. At least if he had his choice. Yeah, obviously Bo Bichette is going to get 99.9% of the playing time there, barring any injuries. Knock on wood, and maybe needing a day off if it's for whatever reason. We might see somebody like IKF fill in, or Ernie Clement if he gets on the team. There's not much to say about Bo, and from the negative point of view, I mean, he's been probably the best player on this team for the last 2 years. I'd like to see them lock him up for a long term, so we don't have to worry about shortstop.
Start the chant, Dustin. Lock him up. Okay, so of course we have Bo. I don't think really need to talk about him. I think what's going to be interesting to look for this year is now that Bo doesn't have Matt Chapman to his right, how that's going to happen. Now, IKF we talked about is, he's quite a good defender as well. Has won a Gold Glove in that position, so it might not be much of an issue. Bo did show he took a large step forward in his defensive abilities last year. And we'll see if that happens again this year. And we'll see maybe how the players around him and in terms of his third baseman affect that. Now, I think in terms of who's going to back up Bo, are we going Ernie Clement, Dustin, now that Espinal has been moved off to the Reds?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's him or IKF. I mean, I guess Biggio can maybe play short. Yeah, I mean, Ernie Clement, I think, has played some shortstop. So if he can keep up what he's done in the spring um, through the regular season, coming off the bench, I mean, that might be, the struggle for someone like him is, he's probably used to playing every day in the minors, and he's going to be a bench bat. It looks like he's really kind of shown some skill here and turned some heads in spring. And the trade of Espinal kind of, to me, signals that they're kind of comfortable with Clement in that role. So it looks to me like Clement's going to be the kind of the bench infielder along with Schneider, and they'll cover short and second and third base as needed.
Well, I would definitely agree. I think Ernie Clement has this unsung ability to be productive without getting a lot of at bats. He seemed to be able to show that last season, and I expect him to show that again this season. I think that's why he's going to get a look. So we've added Bo Bichette and Ernie Clement to our roster. Moving around to second base. I don't know. Last year we kind of wondered who was going to start between Merrifield and Espinal. Are we going with Kevin Biggio essentially being our starting second baseman?
It's another kind of on the fence thing. I think they might give Davis Schneider a shot to run out there. I know that Kevin Biggio started the spring with a little bit of an injury. Maybe he's a little bit behind. I haven't heard a whole lot about him. I haven't seen him, to be honest. It looks like he's had a number of plate appearances, in the spring, but he hasn't done a whole lot with that impressive. But honestly, neither has Davis Schneider. But I would say of the two, Davis Schneider has kind of a little more power potential. He's hit 2 home runs this spring, but his batting average is quite low. So I know it's spring. I think they'll kind of give Schneider a shot to see if he can do something, but he might have a short leash. And my suspect is that Kevin Biggio will end up there, getting the bulk of the innings.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with Biggio. They're definitely giving the benefit of the doubt and making sure that like they seem to be kind of optimistic about Schneider, and I get why he showed himself very well in August of last year, but we did talk about he did have some struggles and does seem to be like he when he gets a hold of one, it goes far, but he does seem to be a little limited in terms of you can essentially pitch around him, or he seems to have a hole in his swing essentially. And if he doesn't get a pitch right where he wants it, he doesn't really seem to be able to do much with it. So I'm interested to see that. I had commented on our stock market episode that I was shorting David Schneider. I'll probably stick with that for now. We'll see. I think he's going to have a very short leash. Dustin, do you think if Biggio and Schneider are not very productive, do you think that's maybe a place that the Jays look to strengthen maybe this season with an external option?
Possibly. One dark horse, let's say, could be Aurelvis Martinez. Comes up from the
Ooh.
minors and fills that spot. Depending on how he has been showing, he's had a decent spring. Again, not a great batting average, but he's shown some power. And if he can figure something out in the minors, and if he's hot, then yeah, maybe they bring him up. But then, yeah, you're right. They could be looking at, a deadline trade or something to shore up the infield, either at second or third. So that's where I guess the opportunity is for the greatest improvement. Let's say on the offensive side of things.
Well, the Jays always seem to add a bullpen arm at the trade deadline. Maybe they'll be adding some infield depth as well. Dustin, shall we discuss the first base option? I think there's only one.
Yeah, I mean, I think similar to shortstop, I think we're gonna have the same guy in that spot for maybe not 162 games, but again, if Vladimir Guerrero could choose, he would be on that field for every game. Yeah, I think the bulk of the time is going to be Vladdy. When he's not DHing, again, there may be some creativity that we'll see with moving guys. If Justin Turner can play a little more third and then get somebody like Joey Votto to play first, or you know, we'll see some movement around there maybe, and give Vladimir some options at DH is what I would hope for. Like, because even though first base isn't a demanding position, I think Vladdy could use some time off his feet, as it were. Again, one of the when I mentioned 3 or 4 guys that I think could be a key to this team being successful this year, it's obviously Vladdy is going to be one of those guys. I mean, he's really got to step up and kind of bring the potential that he showed in 2021, and that we all know that he's got inside of him. I mean, man, this spring is looking great for him. I know he's got, he's slugging like 800 or something this spring. He's got a 1.3 OPS. So I think he's really showing a great spring. And I was looking at last year, his spring wasn't that great. Now he had a pretty decent April last year, and then I don't know if he had a wrist injury or what, but it seems like he was dealing with something that he's figured out. I think very similar to Kirk, he makes great contact, but he makes contact on balls that he probably should just let go. Again, I'd like to see Vladdy make a lot better decisions on the balls that he does choose to swing at, because when he makes contact, he goes far. I want to see him leave the low balls. It seems like a lot of the balls that are low in the zone, although he can reach them, he's not his father and he can't hit them out of the park. So he ends up hitting them on the ground, really hard, and sometimes they squeak through, but many times, as we've seen, they go for a double play. But when he swings at the ball that's kind of in the upper third, he really can launch those out of the park. And I think we've seen some of that this spring. I looked into some of his statistics on that, and that's where he's really good at launching those balls out of the park, is that upper 2/3 of the zone. So I'd like to see him kind of just be better at those decision making swings and really focusing on the balls that he can drive.
He seems to always have some kind of injury, and I don't know if that's just inherent to the athlete that he is. There always seems to be constantly like a knee injury or wrist or whatever. So we'll see if that befalls him again this season. But I think there's only one first baseman. It's obviously going to be Vladimir Guerrero Jr. If this team's going to go anywhere, at all in 2024, he is going to be the reason that it does. If it fails, I think he's going to be, unfortunately, part of the big reason that it doesn't do so well. So far, as you said, he's had a good spring, but Nathan Lucas is having a good spring too. So he may not even be on the roster. So we'll see when the games actually start how Vladdy does. So I'm just going through here, and we've kind of completed our infield. So we have Kirk, Jansen slash Brian Severn. We have IKF. We have Justin Turner, Bo Bichette, Ernie Clement, Kevin Biggio, David Schneider, and of course Vladimir Guerrero Jr. And that really leaves one spot, Dustin, because that brings us to 9. We of course have to have outfielders, which we'll discuss in another episode. But we really have one spot left. What do you think on this one?
This is a tough one. I'm, you know, you want to fall in love with Joey Votto. He's got the pedigree and he's Canadian. He's back for one more year in his 40th year. And can he end his career on a high note? And oh man, the story just writes itself. If he can come in and help this team to a deep playoff run or whatever. So I really want that to happen, just selfishly. I mean, Vogelbach looks good. I mean, again, he's had a really good spring. He hit a home run the other day. He's got, I think, 4 this spring. He can hit the ball out of the park too. He's got a lot more power, at least, than Joey Votto, but at least at this point in his career. To me, I think you go with Joey Votto. He's got the pedigree. I think you kind of give him a shot. Something they were talking about on, I believe it was the At the Letters podcast, the same one that I mentioned earlier, is they were talking about, well, you're going to pay both these guys, let's say $2 million. If you're going to end up with Joey Votto at the end of the day, do you bring in Danny Vogelbach, you put Joey Votto in the minor leagues to start the year, pay Vogelbach $2 million, and then bring up Joey Votto and pay him $2 million? So now you're paying $4 million for the one position, or do you just kind of figure something out and then bring Joey Votto in? I don't know. I don't know if that matters all that much now that Espinal's gone. That's $2 million that they saved there by trading him away. So maybe they don't care as much about that. But to me, I don't know. I think just for the story, for the vibes, for all those the sort of intangible things, I want to see what Joey Votto can do at age 40.
I want to make sure that Joey Votto is going to be able to contribute before I give him a roster spot. Like similar to David Schneider, he seems to be kind of anointed as getting a roster spot. And I don't know if quite yet, really, either of them should really be put in permanent ink on the roster. He did in his first at bat as a Blue Jay, and his first pitch hit a bomb. But I think I want to see a bit more of him, or I guess the rest of the spring training. He had 14 home runs in 65 games last year, which is not bad. I think he's been kind of battling the last couple of years. I looked, and his wins above replacement has not really been good. He's either been an average player or below average player.
He's been injured.
It's a shoulder injury, and so I don't know. It seems like the Jays, this is I think they made a good deal here, in that if he does have something to offer, then he gets a spot, and if he doesn't, well, nothing ventured, nothing gained, right?
I mean, I think if you want to go down to Buffalo, I think he is going to start in AAA. I don't think he has the spot, not only because he, we got to see what he has, but he started spring pretty late. He probably needs a little extra time, a little more at bats. I mean, looking at his stat line from spring, he's got 1 at bat and it's a home run. So it's 1-1-1-1, So yeah, he's going to need more real at bats to even just get up to speed with, major league pitching. So, I think either way he starts in spring. He also kind of rolled his ankle on a bat in the dugout, which is, a classic old man move. But, I don't know if he's anointed or not. I think they want to see what he's got, and he's got the pedigree. Like I said, he's worth a shot.
Well, and I don't mean maybe from the Blue Jays perspective. I think fans are expecting that he's going to be on the roster in some form. So are we? So are we saying that Vogelback's gonna get this last spot?
That's my guess if I had to put my money down. But man, it's just, again, I'm so curious to see over this next week how this roster shakes out.
I think that is all the time we have. Thank you very much for joining me.